It's my privilege to be here today speaking to all of you, where we are going to be stepping away from tech just a little bit, right? So hello, we're going to be stepping away from tech to talk about non-technical skills that elevate engineers. How many people are excited about this topic? I know we've spoken about a lot of really, really technical topics on this webinar, but how many people are grateful for a breather? Right? You can just send a reaction or a message in the chat. So I know that you are here. Okay, yes, thanks, Jesse. Thanks, Bruno. All right, so let's go ahead. I've been writing code since I was 10, about 10. And as someone that young writing code, I had this very strong attachment to my code, very strong attachments. My ego, my code, locked hand in hand. Um, Please confirm my screen is still
Yeah.
fine.
Yes.
Okay, great. Locked hand in hand, like they were artworks just brilliantly laid out. They're supposed to work flawlessly, except that was not always the case though. But anybody who reads my code um, should love it, understand it. People should be grateful to work with me, like that guy. But over the course of time, I've had that delusion completely shattered in so many ways. It has been destroyed, abolished. I have realized from so many experiences that it doesn't matter the height of your technical skills. Some non-technical skills are just so paramount, are just very paramount. And skills like verbal and written communication, organization, clarity, confidence, these things become more important than the quality of technical work. And I learned I had to, but like aside my personal experience, like why do soft skills matter? Like just why? Why do soft skills matter? There's research to back this up actually, and we're going to just briefly talk about that, right? So why do soft skills matter? The first is the Pareto principle. How many people here have heard of the Pareto principle before? You can just raise your hand. Um, Zoom has the raise your hand feature, right? I'm very used to Google Meet. So um, if you've heard of the nobody has heard of Pareto principle before. Okay, Victoria has, anybody else? Okay, so I'll just tell you what the Pareto principle is. The Pareto principle is a general principle. It's not a tech principle, but the Pareto principle says that 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. 80% of the results that you can see that you get come from 20% of your efforts. And that makes like
There's manager.
in almost every field, there is a 20%, there is a type of efforts that we should be focusing on. There's a 20% that yields more results than the 80% of efforts. So that's one thing to note. But then even when we come further and like go into engineering, Harvard University, Carnegie Foundation, and Stanford Research Center in the 90s did a study in engineering. They called it the study of engineering education. And they reported that 85% of job success comes from soft and people skills. And technical skills, just 15%. If this comes as a surprise, like, please, it's a discussion. So I'm going to be asking for like a lot of reactions, a lot of messages in the chat, because we're having a discussion around these things. So we're not trying to live code here, right? If you expected a live coding session, sorry. Right. But yeah, 85% of job success comes from soft and people skills and 15% from technical skills. That's a surprise because for many of us, the pressure has usually been to develop that 15%, develop our technical skills, to be able to write 3 frameworks, 4 frameworks, to be able to understand this language and understand that language. So it's very interesting to see that a huge portion of success as engineers doesn't actually come from our technical skills, but instead the soft skills that we're discussing today. Now, this research was done in the 90s. What do you think the results would be if the same research was conducted today? Right? What do you think the results would be? Would it be the same or it would be worse? Any answers? What do you think it will be? It will be like, I feel like calling people out, like Samsung, SM. If this research was carried out today, do you think it would be worse? I think it would be worse, right? I think it might actually be far less because you have to consider that in our own day, there are a lot of advanced tools and even AI that can do, okay, yes, some people are already dropping predictions on what the research results would be. So Stephen is saying we would have moved by 5% more into soft skills. I don't think I disagree. I don't disagree with that. You have to consider that like there are a lot of low level and even sometimes high level engineering work that can be done without people today, right? There are people who are building entire websites and entire apps just from prompts today, right? So what's scarce, what makes you valuable, right, is that human element, is the human element, and that's the center for today's discussion. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It's very interesting. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And if you look at yourself, you know that this is also true for you, right? It's also true for you. It is easy with technical skills to say, oh, that guy is a badass designer or a very brilliant developer. I can solve almost any problem we could. If cancer was a coding problem, he would fix it, right? But the soft skills in these people that actually elevates them are not always mentioned. Think about, like right now on the call, think about your favorite person to work with. Are they your favorite because of their technical skills alone? Like consciously, like ruminate about it. You find out that there are certain skills you cannot itemize, you cannot hold on to that make you gravitate towards them. So soft skills are what they are called. They are soft. You cannot hold them. They can feel abstract sometimes, right? Because they are usually bred into your personality. So you just think, oh, he's just that guy. But it's a skill. Just the same way like writing code can be a skill. Those things are skills. Many times people don't recognize exactly what it is. They just like you or they like working with you, right? Great. So now that we understand what soft skills are, we've talked a little bit about why they matter. Uh, there are a lot of them. There are a lot of soft skills, and I'm not going to bore you with discussing 20 different skills that are intertwined. Maybe you have been in some other webinar or seminar, and they've talked about, you've heard communication like a bazillion times, whether it's at work or it's at Twitter or it's relationship people, or you've heard them talk about communication, heard them talk about resilience, all those skills that have different names and people are always changing the names and mixing them up. So some people will say resilience, some people will say perseverance, some people will say grit. Another person will come and say it's can-do spirit. And then you wonder, what skill am I actually learning in this place? So instead of doing that, what we are going to do today is we are going to discuss three paradigms. Call them frameworks, 3 frameworks with which you can frame your day-to-day actions. 3 frameworks with which you can question any decision you make. Three paradigms that will see how a lot of these soft skills fall under them, maybe even fall across more than one of them, right? But if you are confused, what am I saying? What are paradigms? So, what are paradigms? I loved reading this book. If you've read this book, you know what I'm talking about. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in the beginning of this book, it explains this idea of paradigms as mental maps that we use to navigate our work and relationship. It's like setting some domain rules, like some coding rules for our mind. They're like lenses, like they're like lenses that we put on our eyes, and everything we see is interpreted through those lenses, right? Let me give you an example. If you are here, I know many people on this table, right? But if you are here and you wear the lens that product managers are stressful and unnecessary, you most likely would never find what we most likely will never work well with a project manager, right? Because of that lens, you assume on default that this person is stressful, and what you are going to go in for are their flaws, their mistakes. Like, you are not going to give any manager you work with enough chance to prove that they are great. That's the paradigm. So even when you work with a great manager, you might not experience greatness with them, right? So paradigms are lenses we wear, mental maps that we can install. And through these mental maps, we can now see and interpret life. And the skills that we exhibit, the skills that we show, usually grow from the paradigms that we adopt. Are we still together? Can you hear me? Great. Thanks, Jesse. Thanks, Victoria. So the skills that we grow come from the paradigms that we adopt. This is from the book, right? The same book by Stephen Covey. If you want small changes in your life, work on your attitude. Or if you want big and primary changes, work on your paradigms, work on those lenses, work on the way that you interpret life. So, like I said, I want us to discuss 3 paradigms. I'll present 3 paradigms that have changed how I work and live as an engineer. And we'll see how the soft skills fall under this trio. And at the end of this webinar, I want you to be armed with a direct way to navigate growing soft skills by focusing on just 3 words. Just 3 words. Are we ready? Are we ready? It's a discussion. I already said this. Yes, thank you, Dami. All right, great. So let's go. The first one. Okay, no, let me not ask you guys to guess. But the first one is people. There is absolutely nothing that is not about people. Absolutely nothing. In fact, like if you go to space exploration, it's about people, right? When people came together and decided they wanted to put a man on the moon, do you know how many people that just that action, just seeing another human being step on the moon inspired, like to be great? They didn't do it because of the moon. No, they did it because of people. Who were the people that did it? Who did it? People. Who watched it? People. Everything was about people. If you remove people from that whole experience, it would not exist and it will lose all significance, right? Even wildlife preservation, like think about it, biomedical research, every single thing, even if you are just in the lab and you don't interact with people, the only thing you interact with are chemicals, it is still about people. So when you install this lens, when you install this mental model, right, as an engineer, it means that you need to be conscious of a couple of things. Who are you building for? Who are your users? Who are you building with? I mean, who are you building for is fairly common. Like if you are building anything great, you are always considering your users, right? But sometimes we ignore who we are building with, who are our colleagues, who are our managers, who are our bosses, what are their aspirations, what are their drives, right? What are they looking for out of this experience, out of this project, right? So who are you building with? The one that gets ignored the most, right? When you start to see that people are important, when you wear that lens that people are important, is the last one. Who are you building as? And this is talking about you, yourself. You are part of the people in the mix, right? So what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are the biases that you have, right? So let's go a little bit deeper into people. What are the skills that we probably would see when we install this mental model and start becoming conscious about people? The first one is empathy, right? You start to put yourself in people's shoes. You start to think like customer service. All right. You start to think like customer service. You treat your colleagues, your users, and sometimes yourself with the same kindness. And empathy is one soft skill that bets a lot. It bets so many, so many. One of them is communication. Because if you are in people's shoes, if you put yourself in people's shoes, you are consciously thinking, oh, what does this person feel like? What does this person want to know? And how do I present it in the clearest, shortest way that this person can understand, right? So communication as an engineer is very, very important. Not becomes, it has been important from day one, right? It's a very,
One,
very important
they,
soft.
they, they look for what you want to use the hustle money.
Um, okay, thank you very much. Very, very important, right? Writing is a career multiplier. So, I mean, how do you write? Is there a problem that you're working on? How do you communicate that problem? Who are the people who want to know about that problem? And how are you communicating that to them, right? Like, send that email, write that email, send that email, write that Slack message, describe what you're working on, talk to. Okay, let's go to the next one, which is collaboration. Collaboration. Because now you now see people as important. And even though you're an engineer, you want to talk to that person in customer support. You like, what's going on down there? I hope people are not experiencing trouble with those features, right? You know that everything is not about you. Like I said in the beginning, right? Like my ego was directly tied to my code. I wanted to solve all the problems by myself. My code was a statement of pride. But you don't have to do everything yourself. You don't have to ego build. I learned that it's not smart to be the smartest person in the room, right? So ask for help, take help, focus on the objective. Like you can achieve your objective and be maybe someone that contributed 10% to it and just by collaboration, all the people that you collaborated with still think that you are the goats, like you are it, right? It's not about you. It's not about you. That's something that we say in we say on stage as musicians, oh, you are playing too much. It's not about you. It's not about you. So collaboration and community. We don't grow in isolation. I, I don't know if you know anybody who has achieved real significant growth in isolation without in some way tapping into community, tapping into mentorship, tapping into some form of interaction with someone else, right? So how often are you taking time out to interact with other people in the community? Anyway, since you are here, to join webinars like this, right? I hope that we'll continue to see you guys in Bitnob's webinar series. to join webinars like this? How often do you go out of your way to teach someone else, to share with someone else? These things are skills. These things are basis for skills that you just need to consider people as important. You just need to take those three groups of people and install the mental model that people are important, have empathy for them, and then they start to manifest, right? But it's easy to, I found that it's easier to do for others until it comes to yourself. So self-awareness is also a skill. Self-awareness is also a skill. You are one of the people too in that mix. So can you carefully identify your own biases? Can you confidently identify your own biases, your own strengths, what makes you different, why you should be the one on that project, why or and not somebody else, right? Sometimes even just vocalizing what your biases are to say a particular design or a particular project is what draws people into you, right? So self-awareness is one of those things. When you, please remember that when I say people, you are also included, right? So self-awareness is very important. And self-awareness is going to build the last skill I'm going to talk about here under people, and that's confidence, right? Like, especially when sometimes your ideas challenge what is normal. How, how do you present yourself? How do you speak? How do you dress? All of this is important, right? But once you consider yourself as an important person in the mix, remember paradigms, people. I'm always going to be going back there so that we can all track. Confidence becomes even your sense of humor, right? Becomes very important. I know people who have had interviews, and spent, say, 30 minutes out of the 40 minutes of the interview call talking with their interviewer about anime. Yes, and still got the job, right? And the only reason they were able to go that far is because they stepped into the call with confidence. So how much confidence have you grown by considering yourself as important, right? So people attend interviews sounding desperate for the job, like, please hire me. And they forget that pity, pity currency doesn't pay everywhere, right? And that sometimes the person that eventually gets the job is the person that came on the call and asked the interviewers questions. Why should I work for you? Right? Why should I work for you? I think there's a meme for something like that where why do the interviewer asked the person, why do you want this job? And the person asks back, oh, why should I work here? Right? But even when you work well with people, you understand people, you understand who you're working for. That's who your users are, who you're working with, who your managers are, who your colleagues are. You see them as important as people. Self, you still run into some issues. And this is where the second paradigm comes in to bring clarity, to bring clarity. And the second paradigm is context. If you don't know what you are doing, chances are you won't do it well. I'll say that again. If you don't know what you're doing, the chances are that you're not going to do it well. Context is about gathering information. You have to be intentional about listening and providing context. Context is very important. Very, very important. Shift your thinking to critically assess what you are building. What are we building here as an engineer? And why are we building this? I will give you an analogy. Imagine you are going to run a race. So you line up at this time and you don't know if it's a sprint or a marathon? You succeed. You want to run a race and you don't know, is it a sprint? Is it a marathon? If it's a sprint, it means you need to give everything you have from the beginning, right? And if it's a marathon, it means you have to pace yourself and conserve your energy. But if you don't know what type of race you're running, how could you succeed? This exemplifies the importance of context, right? Of prioritizing. First paradigm was prioritizing people, and this one is about prioritizing information, both getting and providing information. So let's go a little bit deeper into it, right? The first one will be facts versus, the first thing I'll talk about is facts versus assumptions. A lot of times engineers are building without knowing what is true and what is assumed. You have made a number of assumptions along the way, and because there's no clear distinguishing between, oh, this is facts, I know this, I have assumed this, and maybe even what you don't know about it, right? Seems to create a whole lot of problems.
Good stuff.
And these problems always show up down the line in the course of development, right?
Because we didn't post.
Hi, David. Mute your mic. Thank you. Right. And no, what do I know for sure? Am I assuming here? That clarity going into work, going into any discussion is going to really help you. And that's what fuels the next point, which is boundary of problem is approximately clarity of solution. I had the opportunity to speak to someone some weeks ago at an event, and he was sharing the products he's working on, what he's building, and the problems that he has. And it became very clear to me that context had not been defined for this. And immediately we talked about context. I did not need to tell him a solution. He could see the solution himself, right? How do you define, if you have not defined your problem, you are not going to solve that problem. It's going to be very difficult to solve that problem. There are a number of universally applied rules, like gravity, for example, but your project is not one of them. I'm sorry to say. There are a number of rules that generally apply, but your project is not one of them. So until you define context, until you define your problem, okay, this is who we are solving for, this is why we are solving for them. Until these are the tools that we have, this is how much we have to spend, these are the skills that we have, these are the resources we have, until you can define the boundaries that you have, that information, not having that information is going to be a problem of its own. So the boundary of your problem is the clarity of the problem is also going to create clarity for the solution. So don't just solve fast, solve well. This goes into critical thinking as a skill. This goes into solving as a skill. You just need to be obsessed about context. And one of the things that obsession will do is that it will prompt you to ask questions. Questions is a skill. And it comes that obsession. Who has that information? Can you ask them for it? Right? Questions is very important. As subject matter that you are looking at, ask deeply about the requirements. Ask why that ticket, why behind that ticket? What are the long-term trade-offs, right? You need to be obsessed about getting context. And this organizing work is now about how you provide this context to yourself and to other people, right? So plan. How do you do your time management? How do you do your documentation? Because now after you've done work, you've created some new contexts that you need to communicate to other people, right? So if you obsess about that two-way flow of context, you are going to see that documentation is very important. And documentation is a skill that a lot of engineers have been separated just because of. Every time I work on a project, whether they are project managers or not, I go to that project most of the times, the design, because mobile, right? I go to that design and extract my own context. Okay, what are the individual pieces in this product? What are the different features? What are these features trying to achieve, right? Okay, I won't be able to share one of those screens, but what are these features trying to achieve? It even goes as far as, okay, what are the individual components that appear in a lot of places? By pulling out this context, it simplifies a lot of things that I do forward. And then I use Google Sheets, right? Describe these things in rows and columns and put chips where I can like put the status, I can mark if it's blocked. I remember a project I worked on, I had another page in that same sheet where anytime I had a blocker, I listed it there and put the status and mentioned who was supposed to fix it. So the stakeholders of that project did not need to have meetings with me every time they needed to know what's going on, right? They could always know exactly where I am and exactly what I needed to move forward, right? So how do you organize your own work? How do you manage your own time? It's once you start obsessing about getting context and providing context to the people that need it, gone, right? So don't just automate things. Make sure that you understand the system. And that's something that Kelsey Hightower said. Right? So about now we have talked about people, and now we are thinking clearly, right? And it's time to zoom out, to go even farther out the circle. And that's where our third paradigm comes in. Are we following? What was the first paradigm? Anybody that was here and that is following, what was the first paradigm? I'm looking at the charts. Or if you want to unmute your mic and say it, we're here. Aside Dami, obviously. Yes. People, good. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Jesse. And the second one is on the screen, so I'm not going to ask you for it. The second one is context. So now we're going to the third one. Our third paradigm is curiosity. Now you might be wondering, we came here to discuss soft skills. What is this guy talking about? Curiosity. You have to reignite that childlike wonder that we tend to lose as we become adults and connect it to systems thinking. There's something I say, and you're going to have to edit it for yourself, but that is curiosity killed the cat, not Emmanuel, right? It was the cat that curiosity killed, not me. So I need to keep my curiosity. I need to use my curiosity. And say it this way, when things happen around you, say you are in that general meeting, operations is presenting their reports, what happened, finance is making a presentation, ask yourself, am I being my most curious self? Am I being my most curious self? Now let's talk about some of the things that curiosity can do. First of all, curiosity would help you separate between business and code. Engineers often mistake their code for the business, like their code is the business, but that's not true. That's not true. your code only scales the business. Are we together? Your code only scales the business. The business is a standalone. And maybe that business could only serve, say, 10 people or 50 people every day. And now your code has made it possible that that business can serve millions of people all around the world. But it doesn't mean that your code is the business. And so if you keep looking at your code without a core understanding of what is the business here, it would limit you, right? So separating between business and code comes from curiosity. What is the product here? What is the unique value proposition? What are we doing here? How do I define this in first principles? Like, what is the simplest way I can say this is what we do? If there was no tech, what would helping somebody do this look like? Right? Having that core understanding by being very curious is going to make you a different person. You are going to feel like an alien, right? Especially around other engineers. This would, of course, help you understand business logic before writing business logic. If you're building anything here, of course, you know that there's always that business logic layer, especially if you have written backend systems, right? Or even front-end systems. So you have the presentation, you have your UI, you have business logic. Business logic is basically what should happen if this happens? How does the product work? And then you have your data layer where you store and retrieve information, right? Now, you have to understand the logic of the business before going to write business logic. And that's where curiosity, and that's one of the things that curiosity drives. That's one of the directions that curiosity will drive you into, right? How does the company make money? What's the real KPI behind this feature? There are like a lot of questions that you need to be asking about the actual business that you are writing code for. Another direction that curiosity will drive you is in measuring performance. It's one of the things that is very lacking amongst engineers, especially. You build something, you push it to production, and as long as it's in production, it's other people's responsibility to know if it succeeds, if it's working well, if there's a problem, and then they come back and tell you. But it shouldn't be that way. You should be curious enough to discover how what you have built has performed. And when you have that curiosity, it also means that you will set markers, you will set ways to measure this before you release it. And like it will just make you alien. It will just make you alien. There are technical metrics that you can measure. If it's a backend system, maybe you're measuring your latency, the latency of your endpoints, memory, battery usage, speed, all these things. Or you are even looking out for what are the product metrics? What's the user satisfaction score? How many users use this feature and were satisfied? How many users use this daily, monthly, daily active users, monthly active users? They are like all these metrics that you can obsess over. And like sometimes you know the product more than other people because you wrote it, right? So when you combine all this information, all this context that you have gotten from curiosity, do you see what I did there? All this context that I have gotten from curiosity, it drives you in such a direction, right? So ask yourself, is this feature doing what business and operations wanted it to do, right? Is it working the way it was supposed to work? Is there a bug that's something I can improve that, maybe people are experiencing it because it's not major, nobody's reporting it. I recently had one of those where I found out that special characters were not, our backend was not accepting special characters for our address field. And nobody was complaining about it. Like users would just do it, see the error from the back end, and continue their work. But when I opened our Crashlytics dashboard and just out of curiosity and going through like the errors that are on there, I saw address cannot contain special characters. I saw the number of users it was affecting, and I started to wonder, why has nobody mentioned this so far? All right. And then we fixed it. It was a very easy fix. Just add a validation to that field so that people cannot enter special characters in that field. Save them the stress of having to, loop to the backend twice. Done. Done. Right? So obsess over measuring performance. Just be curious. Like the things that you need to do to set you apart would stay in your face. They would literally wave at you and say hi. And say hi. And then we also have asking questions. If you are following, you see that asking questions is a double feature. It came under context, and now it's coming under curiosity. Asking questions under context is basically you're trying to solve a problem, and you are basically drilling deep into that problem. The one here under curiosity is amiable. Simply amiable. Now you are going out of your way to ask questions that don't even concern you. You're asking finance questions. You're asking operations. You're asking design, even HR, right? You're asking them questions. Your growth lives here because by the time you start to understand things from these various perspectives, there's a way it accelerates the quality of the work that you deliver. Curiosity would also drive you in the direction of adaptation. You are going to be Darwin's favorite person. If it's languages, if it's new language, if it's frameworks, if it's tools, that whole thing that they call learning, right? Aptitude to learn as a skill is going to be birthed naturally from your curiosity. And one other thing that is going to come out of it is creativity, like finding new ways to use old things, like remix, reuse, rethink. It's just, is it possible, like just by perpetually asking questions, perpetually being curious. Curiosity, like I said, curiosity killed the cat, not Emmanuel. So as I continue to ask these questions, solutions would always pop up, solutions would always come about. There's a problem that we had. I think we wanted to implement something very sweet, and like it was like a notification system. Or when this transaction had gone through, we wanted to let the user know. And I think somebody mentioned, oh, it needs to be real time. Then instead of going to implement a whole sockets infrastructure, Firebase Firestore has something that is real time. How can we use that here? Right? And we did. And in fact, it now became a system that we use across our products without needing to implement or manage any sockets infrastructure, saving costs, saving time, and a whole lot of other things, right? So ask questions. How, like, can we add these two things together? Can we mix this together? Curiosity is the birthplace for a lot of dangerous things. And that's why I like this quote. This quote by Andy Jones that says, stay curious. That's how you become dangerous the best way. Like, forget going into politics, forget being the president's brother. One of the best ways to becoming dangerous is by staying curious. Right? So who can, okay. As I round up, I want to say that skills are not installed. So even though we've talked about a lot of things today, please bear in mind that skills are not installed. They are instead grown with continuous practice. So it's okay to fail. It's okay to not be 100% by tomorrow. It's okay to not be the best communicator by next month, by next year. What is not okay though is to stop trying. What is not okay is to stop trying. What's not okay is to retreat back into comfort, to being comfortable, right? Because these things are not installed. The only way that they become part of your consciousness is by continuous practice. So sometimes it might even be in retrospect, right? Oh, looking back, these are the people that I ignored. These are the things I could have done with or from these people. This is context that I did not really have, that if I had, would have changed how I did this, right? This is something I was never curious about. And if I had known even just a little bit about this, it could have birthed this idea on how to. So sometimes it's in retrospect, but please know that they are not installed. You have to continuously practice them. You have to do them over and over again. And the beautiful thing about it is that soft skills are very powerful because you can transfer them. You can transfer them. So even if you stop doing engineering today and you go and take off farming, like a lot of my bosses aspire to, maybe me too, some nice farmhouse somewhere, no longer looking at screens for 10 hours wherever, whatever you do, you can transfer those soft skills. You can become a medical doctor today, and these same skills would be what set you apart. Right? So pick a paradigm, right? Out of the three: people, context, curiosity. Reflect on it, practice it, and pick one and focus on it for a month and see what it turns. It's on three very powerful frameworks. And so whatever you're working on right now, have you carefully identified the people involved, the people it is for, the people it is with, and who you are building it as, right? Have you defined the context? Do you have the full boundary of the problem and the boundary of the solution? And lastly, are you being your most curious self? Are you being your most curious self? You probably see somewhere there's 9 soft skills, 10 soft skills, top 20 soft skills for the next decade. Almost all of these skills would naturally come out of you when you consider these 3 things for anything that you do. So thank you very much for coming with me on this. I would love to hear what paradigm hits you the most that I are choosing to focus on. Let's build each other up. My name is Emmanuel Aliyu, software engineer at Bitnob, and you can find me on all socials as at Major E_1. So thank you very much for having me.